What's up guys, ADCZ here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we're doing a deck that you probably haven't seen, a version of this deck for quite a while. I'm talking about the FTKs that used to be quite dominant. With 3 Skull Dreads, you were going to draw your whole deck and you're going to win the game in one turn. But ever since the dangers, the main ones got limited, the deck is not very consistent, so people just put this deck to the side. But I think that the deck is still a really fun deck to play if you don't want to interact a little with your opponent. So I'm just going to show you a version of how you're going to make this deck work. It's still pretty much the same old concept with just a few engines mixed in to make it a little bit better. So before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed, comment down below which decks you want to see next, and now let's begin. So to start off, here's the main win condition of the deck: Arcana Force 21, the world, shout out to Dio. This card just skips your opponent's whole turn. We play another card in the deck that makes the coin flip of this card irrelevant, because otherwise we would be relying on a 50-50 flip, which is not how you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Because when this card is summoned, you flip a coin. If it's heads, during the end phase you will tribute 2 monsters to skip your opponent's next turn. If it's tails, during your opponent's draw phase, they will be adding every time the top card of the grave to their hand, so you never want to do that. So you're just trying to control the coin flip with another card in the deck, and just special summon this card from your hand very easily with Skull Dread. For the dangers, play of course the best ones. Unfortunately, they're all limited. This is why this deck is a little bit worse than it used to be. Actually a lot worse, but we still have a way to make it work. So 1 Nessie, 1 Jackalope, and 1 Tsunoko. Pretty standard. And since this is a danger-based deck, we play a lot of dangers other than these 3, so we play 3 Bigfoot. You want to maximize on the big ones just because in case you go second, you just have a way to beat down your opponent, and these actually can either beat down your opponent with a 3k beater or just pop cards when you discard them. 3 Thunderbirds, same thing, 28 attack, pops back row when sent to the graveyard. 3 Mothman helps you dig through your deck a little bit faster, and it's level 4, which is actually really important because there are level 4s you want to be capitalizing a lot on this deck. And same thing with Chupacabra, still level 4 monster, and brings back monsters from your grave when it's sent to the grave. If you want to make it a fully based Danger FTK deck, you can cut the supplementary engine I'm going to show you a little bit later and run even more dangers. You can run Ogopogo and Dogman, but these effects don't really offer a lot. But if you want to just focus completely on the draw your whole deck aspect, then you need to play more than these dangers. But this deck doesn't have the world just for the win condition. I will explain a little bit later, but for now, the supplementary draw engine that you have to run this deck no matter what you're playing is the Dark World engine. So we have 3 Brow, because you discard this with your dangers, you draw more cards. 3 Snow, you discard this with your dangers, you set your Brow so you can discard later to draw more cards. That's pretty standard. Now for the engine that helps you win games when you don't have enough resources to actually draw through your whole deck is a zombie engine, because you can just discard these with your dangers, have them in the graveyard, and then you just resolve them whenever you want to be able to get your monsters you want on the field. So 2 Banshee, by banishing her from the field or grave, you just get your zombie world from your deck. 2 Glow of Bloom, by banishing this when sent to the grave, you either add your Ballard Roach from your deck to your hand if you don't have Zombie World in the field, or if you already have Zombie World in the field, you can just special summon it. And 1 Ballard Roach, because this one is the one that keeps recurring itself when Zombie World is on the field. Even if you don't have Banshee, when you send Bloom to the grave, it's not bad to add Ballard Roach because it gives you more cards in your hand to make sure your dangers resolve, because the more cards you have in your hand, the less chances your opponent has of sniping them. And then just send your Ballard Roach to the grave, leave it there until you draw to your Banshee, and then during the next time by phase, then you can just special summon Ballard Roach on the graveyard, have an extra negate. So that's pretty much how this works. 1 Armageddonite, this can either work as starter for both engines, because you can either send your Shadow Beast or your Zephyros to be able to draw more cards, or you can send your zombies if you know you don't have a hand that can actually get to the world, so you can just get this engine going and be able to play. 1 Shadow Beast, you send this, like I said, with your Armageddonite, but you can send this with your Curious as well to be able to draw more cards, or it's another monster you can send with your dangers, but just one off, because unlike the Dark Worlds, it's only once per turn effect. And 1 Zephyros to keep recycling your dangers, because when you send this to the grave and you resolve a Nessie and it's on the field, you can just bounce it back. It's level 4, so you can make a rank 4 and then use this Nessie again, because the dangers are not once per turn. And for the spells, 1 Light Barrier, this is how you control the coin flip of the world, because the turn this card is on the field, you can just control the switch of the Arcana Force monsters. It forces you to flip a coin during your standby phase, but the first turn it's activated, it actually counts as if it actually flipped the coin to your advantage without having to flip the coin, so it actually the first turn that matters. So This is why it works well with the world. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to do this combo without relying on luck. One zombie world, like I said, you need to be able to have an extra win condition now, because there will be a lot of games where you will not be able to draw your whole deck because of the lack of good danger monsters in the deck. So you need something else. And this card is also really good against dinosaurs on its own, and even Salamangreat. So it's like it cuts like Flightgate against some matchups, even Thunder Dragon. But yeah, this deck you don't see it too often, but it could work against that too. 3 Allure, like I said, you need to draw your whole deck. I'm pretty sure everyone remembers that. 3 Beginning of the End, same thing. All monsters are dark in this deck, so you can just keep drawing more cards. If you see Beginning of the End with a bunch of dangers, that's pretty much the cue that you are going to be able to do the FTK if you're not interrupted. But because Azathoth is not in the game anymore, the deck is even more vulnerable than it used to be, because like before you could summon Azathoth and your opponent would not be able to Ash your Beginning of the End later, but now they can do it if they know how to play against the decks, so that can happen too. 1 card distraction, because you want to discard your entire hand, you basically plus and your opponent goes even, unless they're playing something discard reliant, but you don't care too much because you want to FTK your opponent anyway, and if you are lucky, you might discard a hand trap out of their hand, they draw a new hand without a hand trap, but the reverse can happen too, so it's kind of like a double-edged sword. So don't think that this card is going to be great every time, but it's a good card to have in your hand because you're playing Dark Wars and Dangers. And 1 Monster Reborn, because if you draw the world very early, you want to be able to keep using your dangers, but if you discard the world, if you don't play a card like Monster Reborn or maybe a word like a Succession, then the FTK is dead because you won't be able to bring back the world unless you summon Dugaris, but you want to use Dugaris for the draw effect in this deck, not the revival effect, unless it's absolutely necessary. But just having this Monster Reborn, if you draw the Monster Reborn early, you can set it and keep it there until you make sure that your world is not in the graveyard, or you can just keep digging through your deck until you find your Monster Reborn to bring back the world and then FTK this way. Now for the extra deck, 1 Linkuriboh, because of the bloom, to be able to get it to the grave to get its effect. 1 Vampire Psyker, because with Zombie World all your monsters become zombies, so you can just keep bringing back your Battle Roach or other monsters to keep drawing cards. 1 Masquerena, if you want to make space on the field and then have something to be able to do in your opponent's turn. 1 Cerberus, this is mainly to deal with Nibiru tokens and stuff. Nibiru doesn't hurt this deck too much because it's not like you're trying to assemble a board, so if your opponent like Nibiru's on a Sculptor, it doesn't really matter, but you might have trouble dealing with the token if you don't have a big enough monster if they attributed more than a Scaldred, then you need to be able to clear your opponent's board in order to FTK with the world, because it's not exactly an FTK. You skip a turn, then you attack for game, so you need to have a clear field in order to do that, and that's why Cerberus is really helpful. 1 Cerberus to pop those backwards when you're going second, 1 Unicorn to link climb, 1 Curious, because all the dangers are different types, so you just summon this and your Shadow Beast to draw a card. You can send all your zombie monsters to be able to do that, whatever you need. 3 Scaldred, because this card actually managed to stay at 3 somehow, and it's not relevant to go to 1 nowadays, so I think it's staying at 3 for a good time until something new arrives that makes this card broken, but now it's 3, you just get to draw your whole deck, pretty much. 1 Appaloosa, if you know you won't be able to get to anything good, then just summon this to have negates. 1 Boral Sword going second, you can OTK better if you have a lot of small monsters on the field. 1 Borreload to be able to deal with some problematic monsters, and 2 Xyz monsters because you play a lot of level 4s. The first one is Dugaris, which is the most important one, because you can do 2 things with this. You can keep drawing through your deck, which is what this deck wants to do, but like I said before, if you don't want to wait until you draw your Monster Reborn and you already have your world on the grave, you can just bring it back. But the fact that skip something during the next turn is relevant because you're just going to attack for a game anyway if you manage to pull the FTK, so that's actually pretty good. But most of the time you want to be able to use the draw effect to be able to keep playing, because that's what you want to do. You want to keep drawing cards until you have the world, Light Barrier, a Scaldred on the field, and 2 more monsters that you contribute, and possibly another monster, because that's 5900. Actually, you need 21 more to be able to go for game. And 1 Dweller, just like I said, you need to be able to have something supplementary and to be able to do something in case you know you won't be able to get to your win condition, so you can just stall another turn, maybe attack for game next turn. So, yep, that's the deck. It's a pretty fun deck. You don't get to play a lot of like these decks nowadays. Even the Gemini FTK is not really relevant. It might be even more relevant later if Block Dragon actually gets banned on one of the next lists. So, if you're looking for a deck like that, I think this is a really fun deck to play. I know your opponents might not appreciate it too much, but I think we have a lot more degenerate stuff nowadays that this deck is actually a fair deck now. So, yep. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, if you enjoyed it, like the video, subscribe to the channel, because we're going to upload a lot more amazing duel videos, deck profiles, discussions about the meta, anything you can imagine, and we'll see you next time.